And I feel
who's
like
got Jimmy Fredette's phone number?
Yeah, let me call him up right now.
Yeah. Aiden will reach out to Jimmy
Yeah,
Fredette.
I'll call him right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, old and young, listeners on audio and viewers on video, audience members of all varieties and walks of life, we here at Knights of the D-Pad have shown you, or told you, or shared with you in some other fashion many things about games, gaming, and esports over the past semester, 2 semesters actually. But now we have a special thing ready for you. A interview. That didn't come out as smooth as I was wanting it to. An awesome interview with a cool guy who is the director of esports at the University of Utah. I would like to introduce everybody to our guest star for today, AJ Dimick.
Woo!
I still can't
Thank
get
you
over
for
your
having me.
voice.
Pleasure to be here.
So this is a special episode.
It is some good pipes. I mean that works. Well done. Yeah.
This is going to be a very special episode, everybody. We are talking about college and esports, and we have someone who knows what he's talking about for running an esports program. This is a special in-depth interview, so we are skipping the news segment until later. Saving it for later. That's the right way to say it.
There it is.
We're saving the news and esports reporting for the end of the episode. Right now, we're just going to launch straight into talking with AJ about an esports program at a college, what that does for the college, and why they have it.
And why BYU doesn't?
I don't know if AJ can answer that
I don't
question.
think AJ can answer
That's
that
fair,
question.
but we're going to ask it anyway because we want to know BYU.
So AJ, tell us, why doesn't BYU have?
That should be a fun conversation. Very comfortable.
So funny. So I think before we get too deep into it, AJ, would you want to introduce yourself just a little bit in depth for the audience about like where you got started in esports, why you're doing it, that sort of thing?
Sure. I mean, the first thing you're going to notice about me is that I'm a little older than the typical university esports director. The typical, when we started at the University of Utah, we were the 30th school in the country to offer institutional support for varsity esports. The first one in the country that ever did it was Robert Morris University by the great Kurt Melcher, kind of the father of collegiate esports. In 2014, they were the first to give scholarships for a League of Legends team and for varsity esports in those days when ULAL, as it was known back then, was going great and hitting strides, and they were the first. At the time we did it, and that was a catalyst of all these organic kind of student communities that were kind of way big into this and wanted to wear school colors and participate in these games. And when we did it we worked on it hard through 2016. It became a thing in 2017. We were the 30th school in the country. We were and this is an interesting note, we were the second Division I school, so they tended to be extremely small campuses to then, and we were the first school from a Power 5 conference to do it. And it is still to this day, in 2023, there are over 600 schools in the country with some level of institutional support for esports. What that support means is a very wide spectrum from we make you shirts and allow you to use the school marks to giving full ride scholarships and making very, very, very glamorous facilities to do it and going all in like it's a traditional sports team with budgets that are congruent with that. And so that kind of means, and we're more on the smaller side of that versus in terms of resources, but I think we do a really good job and push it at school.
Over 600. I knew that there were a lot. I didn't realize there were that
awesome.
many.
There are hundreds of colleges with this now. It's pretty cool.
I mean, you don't realize it because like when we did it first, we were the first Pac-12 school. Now there are 8 Pac-12 schools with institutional support for varsity esports. So you don't realize it's that many because they do still tend to be the smaller campuses. And when you get into the reasons why a college would invest and actually add actual resources to this, you start to understand why it tends to be the smaller colleges instead of the big ones.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, how about we dive into that?
Yeah,
Sure.
why is that? Why?
Because small college, like if you're a tiny college in Ohio, with a enrollment of 1,600 students, and you don't have $40 million lying around to do college football, an annual budget of that, say, to do investment in this space is a low barrier to entry. It doesn't take much to do it. And if you are a tiny college and it's a recruitment and retention strategy for them. And if you can put 150 students enrolled in your college because you're invested in this space and it's a marketing thing around this space, that moves the needle for you. And the cost to doing it was effective relative to what some of the other things might have been. And so for many schools really early on, it was part of their recruitment and retention for the same reasons that in student recs across the country that there's bowling alleys and pool tables and all those things, that those sort of campus life things for students. There was an investment in this space and into varsity competition in those spaces for exactly those same reasons. It was what everyone hoped was an effective recruitment and retention thing for students, and it has been. And so for a small school, it's a really good thing. If you're a bigger school, the same value proposition doesn't quite apply, and there has to be different reasons to engage into it.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. So what do you think were some of the reasons that led to the University of Utah developing its esports program?
It's an incomplete thing. I'm reading on this agenda here, and one of your questions you're going to ask me, and I'm going to ask it to myself right now, is how we gained admin support. And the truth is, we didn't. Yeah. And the truth is that we had admin support. Like we didn't get it for esports. We'd already engaged in gaming for 7 or 8 years through the Entertainment Arts Engineering program, which is an academic unit that's invested in game design. So this conversation of like, where do games belong on a college campus, and why do you guys touch this? Isn't it weird that video games are so prominent on a college campus? We were the #1 ranked program in the country in this space, and at certain times, we were the only straight up #1 academically ranked program in the country. So the University of Utah had already done all this normalization that video games belong on a college campus, and students are engaged with this and all the positive attention you can get from doing it. And so when esports started to become more prominent, we were engaged in this thing. It wasn't a new conversation for everyone to be having. It was a little different in that we were going to invest resources into actual students playing video games on campus instead of studying them, but we went all in, and the Pac-12 itself did an exploration of video of now there's a lot of conferences that are into esports, but the Pac-12 itself went around and spoke to every Pac-12 school about it and started working on maybe Pac-12 support of esports. That effort eventually failed because every school wasn't on board with that.
Oops.
But we had it. Like, they talked about it. We already did it on school. And so we had a lot of support before the conversation even began to do it. And we just had to figure out how to pay for it at that point, which we barely did, but we did.
Okay, so it was like the faculty support, quote unquote, came from the fact that there was already a conversation about video games, just not esports, until it became big, because you guys had already been doing some things in the other video game industry areas outside of competitive gaming.
There was already 300 students on campus at that time studying video games, and a 600 student club studying video games that fielded as a student club 11 competitive teams already, and we're into video game research and video game studies, and had prominent alumni out in the industry who were getting a lot of attention in the university for making video games. So yeah, it was the start of that conversation of why video games on the college started around 2010. And so by the time 2017 rolled around, a lot of the heavy lifting for that institutional support had already happened.
I mean, those are some good numbers that you guys were already putting up with video games. That's good.
What's the Doug Bowser? I was trying to think of, like, isn't Doug Bowser a U of U alumni?
Yeah, Doug Bowser.
Yeah,
he's like one of the highest profile ones.
Yeah, he's a graduate in 1984, and he is not only is an alumni, he's a very patriotic alum.
Nice.
Would
He,
not, man.
He is very into his roots and tries really hard to give back and makes what he calls an annual pilgrimage back to the homeland and comes and visits.
Annual pilgrimage.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That is awesome.
That is super cool. Well, it's interesting. I mean, BYU has its own. I mean, I can think of one big BYU graduate who's relatively big in the gaming scene. I prepare for my regular shilling of Fortnite.
Gosh dang
Or
it.
chills
man.
for the guy who like created Fortnite, who's like the head creative lead on it. Donald Mustard. It graduated
Donald
from
Mustard.
BYU.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ah.
And
That's
so
right.
we.
Donald Mustard at Epic Games chair and his brother.
Yeah, and his brother's
Jeremy.
a big streamer.
Work at Epic Games Studio in Salt Lake, a chair, and we're big into Fortnite. And I don't remember. I'm on stream, so I can't remember the name of the game. At one point, Chair had the biggest, highest-selling mobile game of all time. And so not only that, they like to hire BYU alums at Chair. There's a few BYUers in video games.
Oh, Infinity Blade?
Yeah, did they do Infinity Blade?
Yeah, Epic did
That's
Infinity
it.
Blade.
Thank you.
Yeah, Infinity Blade.
Yeah.
Good job, Jason.
Okay. Yeah. Jason, our audio editor, remembered that one off
Good
camera.
job.
But
Good work, Jason.
so I'm trying to think, how much we have our BYU Esports Club, right?
Club,
where
yeah.
we're in the
It's
Discord.
the
How
BYU
many
Esports
people-
Club is actually the second largest club at
On
BYU.
campus.
Like just with membership,
Yeah.
like only beat out by the Swing Dance Club. But I mean, what are you gonna do?
What are you going to do about
Yeah.
swing
Swing
dancing?
dancing.
The swing dancing.
BYU, everyone's swing dancing.
Everyone's swing
Exactly.
How do you guys know off the top of your head how big that is?
I think it's 800 something, isn't it?
I think I remember it's at least 600. I think.
It's 600 to 800 or something on there. Because
Okay.
I think the Discord is
These
sitting
numbers
around
are starting to sound familiar.
600. What, did John tell you about those?
No,
Yeah.
no, it's just the fact that it's similar numbers to what AJ was talking
Oh.
about
Yeah,
at
that's what I'm kind of
University
thinking.
of Utah.
Like, we've got a little bit of that existing base there, and we've got that,
Yeah.
big
It's true.
name
I feel
alumni.
like
I
one
mean, we
thing
got over 200 people to sign up to.
Yeah, we're
Have
waiting
the esports
on that
class.
the report for that class that they were working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
actually, no, we didn't really talk about it. It was like 212
It was
people.
212
Yeah.
is how many they had.
So AJ, did we tell you about this? I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was recently a thing here at BYU where which department was it?
Student
It wasn't
activities.
extramurals. It was student activities. Said that they were considering creating an esports class, but they wanted to gauge student interest. So they let the esports club have a booth at the Student Wellness Expo, and we got more than 200 signatures
We got way more
for
signatures
it.
than they were basically
Because what were they
saying.
originally saying? Like
It
they
was
were
30 to
thinking,
50.
They were like
they're
30 to
if you can
50.
get 50 signatures, we'll give you a class, and then we got
What
200.
does that
So
mean?
you know,
What is esports class?
It seems like from what we've been kind of told is that because we have a LAN place just south of campus, LAN King, and the class would essentially be run by LAN King for the most part, and you would go to LAN King and just play for tournaments and teams depending on kind of what games people play in each section.
it seems based off of which department is running it that it's probably pretty similar to like the
bowling or a
bowling
racquetball
and the
class.
basketball and racquetball classes, where it's mainly just focused around
Yeah,
like student wellness activities and stuff.
I mean, it's a constant conversation of people think the conversation around if a university is going to institutionally support esports, they think there's a conversation around this idea, where does it belong? Like where does it belong on campus? Like what department or what college or what unit on campus is the one that should have it? And the answer, I mean, the conversation doesn't go like that. It belongs to whoever didn't say no.
No, this is so true. I was doing a news story about esports on campus because I'm a journalism major, and originally they were trying to get it running with the extramural department. And I got to tell you, the admins of the extramural department were just acting like they were trying to shuffle it off as fast as possible.
That's so funny.
And
Well, I mean, it's kind of an
It's
interesting.
whoever doesn't say no.
Yeah.
That's how this podcast was created, right? I mean, essentially, because like we asked, we asked the BYU like sports department, and they were like, "Yeah, all right, well, you guys did."
Yeah,
but
so-
and they didn't say no. Like, how much does this actually have to do with
Yes,
like
it
the sports
does.
department? Probably not a ton, but it's like they didn't say no, so we'll take it, right?
we'll take the opportunity we can get.
So at at the U, what department? I mean, I guess it's esports department, but like generally, what department is the esports program under?
The EAE program, the Entertainment Arts Engineering program. The
Oh,
games
okay.
program. And so,
Okay.
which is unusual.
Yeah.
It is one of only 3 colleges in the country, to my knowledge, and I think that information is accurate, where it's housed in an academic unit. The traditional way for it to be is what you think it is. It's campus rec, student life, kind of thing. In smaller colleges, there's every once in a while there's somebody that houses it in athletics. But those are usually really small colleges that do.
Who don't have other athletics? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's usually a campus rec, student life sort of endeavor.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I got a curious question for you. Just moving forward with some of the ones that we prepared for this. Did you guys have any issues with recruitment, or was it pretty easy? I mean, how does your program recruit players for teams?
We do external recruiting a little bit, but this is actually kind of a philosophical question. In addition to just doing it, like I would. You have these at the University of Utah. We have this huge student community of gamers, and the club before there was any notion of varsity esports was called Crimson Gaming, and Crimson Gaming was a thriving, huge, extremely organized, had sponsors of their own, were extremely good marketers of their own, and so the politics of varsity esports is like, yes, every student thinks they want institutional support, and every student thinks they want, but what they really want is give us a blank check and walk away, university, and let us run it ourselves because we're so awesome at doing it. And that's what they really want. But money comes with strings, and rules and layers of approval for anything, and directors that are old guys and things of that nature. So it is never a question of that they're gonna give you a budget and we'll walk away. And so we first of all, when we did it, we made sure it was my thing that we were not going to usurp the organic student community and say, thanks for making this, guys, we got it from here. That would have sucked. And it would have been a huge political problem for us, and why would they have been happy with that? And so Crimson Gaming still exists to this day, and I have no oversight over it whatsoever. And that's very deliberate. There is Crimson Gaming and there is Utah Esports. A lot of the people that are involved in Crimson Gaming also have a role in Utah Esports. But they have to know like which hat they're wearing and when, because I have 7 layers of approval for anything that I would do.
Wow.
Okay, that makes sense.
And rules for Utah as a Pepsi school, and if a energy drink that isn't associated with Pepsi ever wanted to sponsor me, that would be forbidden, right? For Crimson Gaming, they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they do it. So the structure is that everything Utah Esports does is separate, but it has to trickle down and increase the experience for that student community and do those things. And it doesn't involve a lot of the same people, but they're 2 different things. As far as recruiting, at first we didn't want to recruit at all because it would have been a terrible. Now there's scholarships for a League of Legends team that used to be a club team. Now, if there were bigger scholarships, we're going to externally recruit. Now, no one that was on that club League of Legends team actually ever gets to be on that varsity team.
Oh yeah.
Because we've just brought in players and we've outmoded you, and you're back to where you were, and you started this huge student charge to make this thing. But now you don't get to wear the University of Utah colors on your jersey and get to play for them because we externally recruited. Thus, I am really careful, and this is very different from other esports programs, from externally from recruiting. It is, to me, it is a by us, for us sort of thing. And so I really want the people that are on the varsity program to be homegrown, and those kids that are in the club scene to be able to promote themselves from the varsity scene by getting good enough. Does that mean that we're not recruiting challenger level 80 carries? And we've had them, but recruit more challenger level 80 carries, then yeah, it does mean that. But it probably means more to the student body of the varsity that the participants come from their home community.
Yeah, 100%.
That makes sense.
I feel that.
That's the way to do it. I mean, because you've got that baseline of the student body who supported this from the get-go. If you shun them, that foundation collapses. You have nothing without that base of the actual students. So even more than having the best players, it's important to have
the identity of
representation
your
of your own school in the players, definitely.
No,
Your home and we concede nothing. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna home grow you. There's a huge student community. There's plenty of good players to draw from, and we have to make them even better players. And then we're gonna figure out a way. We're gonna go out. We're gonna kick you.
We might have to bleep that out in post.
I'll get to it. That's funny though. That's hilarious.
That might be a difference. Here, I wouldn't bleep that out in a million years.
Yep.
BYU, you know.
BYU.
So then, if you're not externally recruiting, how are you doing the internal recruiting end? Do you already have like a massive, like?
There is some external recruiting, so it's not like it never happens, but you have to be interested in our community. You have to be part of what we're doing, and of course, like if there's everyone knows each other, so sometimes all of the league team, the Overwatch team, are friends with somebody that want to become part of us, and so we recruit them and we do that thing. So it's not like it never happens. It's just a little bit different than maybe the way other people do it. The internal recruiting is the first week of school, every year, the fall semester is a campus-wide tryout. Most of the years we've done that regardless of like anyone that signs up gets to come play a game and try out, because it's the students' teams, it's the varsity team, and so if you want to come try out, you're going to play a game. When there's 500 of you, we might get a little concerned about, okay, let's have a level cutoff and make sure if it's Overwatch that the bronze level players aren't showing up to play a game. Yeah, but we find the best of us, and then we have a role. Like we collaborate with the club. Like the varsity team, if you're one of our top 7 players in league, you're going to be on our League of Legends team. Then with tryouts, usually Crimson Gaming, the student club, fields their own team, even if there's a varsity team. And so we make sure that the student player, the coaches are there, participate in that tryout that is hosted by the varsity. And so we make sure that they can pick the JV team, essentially, which is the club team, from those players. And then sometimes it's interesting because whoever's the best players from that tryout, 3 months later, if you want to make it into the varsity training room, be on the varsity team, those JV players are doing work in solo queue and get to become one of the 7 best players on that team. And so you can be promoted to varsity if it's in the interest of the varsity to do it. And so there's collaboration with that community club team all over the place for those homegrown players, and there's always a lot of them. There's plenty of good players to find.
Yeah, I feel like that's an interesting thing that separates esports and traditional sports is when you want to train and have experience in the game, in the match. With esports, you just need your computer. And with and you can go into ranked matches online and just keep going. But with like traditional sports, there's training and practice that you can do on your own. But once you want to get practice in the game itself, you need the team, you need some sort of league or group of people to be going up against.
Yeah, you're not just going to be like, I got to go practice football. Let me, on my own, practice a football game.
Yeah, doesn't work. But with esports, that's a possibility because online matchmaking means you don't need to find some esports or some football league that's on your level. It's like you just got to go and hit the ranked button, and you're good.
For you.
So that's got to be nice.
It's also uncommon that like in traditional sports where the phenomenon of I'm going to dive deep into this and hit this hard, and it's my first season of the league, and I made plat, and then I bust my butt, and 18 months later I'm master or grandmaster. Like it's uncommon those things happen, but there are plenty of examples where they do happen, and so like you are always invested in those guys that were your close calls kind of players because you don't know what's going to happen to them. sideways as a guy can make varsity, and you don't know that he's going to rest on that and not hit solo queue and really hard and not keep up or not increase his champion pool and it's you got to keep tabs on what's going on in the periphery.
Definitely. Yeah. So like, there's still a lot of work once you make the team. You know, that dedication.
Yeah. Just like how any sports team would
Same
keep
with every sports,
practicing
yeah.
after, once college football students make the team, they don't just like stop,
Yeah.
They've got to keep practicing, so it makes sense
Yeah,
that it would be the
same
same for
thing.
esports.
Another part of the reason why I think that the term esports, while it can be an interesting one and one where I'm sometimes like, I wonder if there was a better thing to call it, it does make sense along those same lines. You know, it has a
The
lot
same
of the same
mindset.
competitive mindset, methodologies and stuff. But yeah.
I mean, ultimately, what are sports except a game that you get a team together and you play against another team that's playing the same game? Esports are the same thing, they're just
Online.
digital. Yeah.
Is there a competitive event where you have two teams playing different games against each other?
But that's not what.
Is there a way to make
Because
that
I
happen?
said that they play the same game against
Yeah.
another team that's playing the same game.
That'd be
How would you
weird.
play different?
But you
What?
could.
How would
Yeah,
you do
it's-
that?
it's-
I'm not sure. I'm just spitballing random ideas.
Like, all right,
here.
the league team's gonna play league against the Overwatch team. Let's see who
Let's
wins.
Yeah, that'll end very well. Yeah.
Anyway,
We're getting sidetracked.
we're getting sidetracked.
So
We bandied that idea about of doing an event at Utah where and streaming it and making content around it of having the Valorant team play a league game against the league team and then vice versa. And you know how that would go. Of the league team could hang in there way more in Valorant than
Yep.
the Valorant team could hang in there in league.
Yep. Some skills translate, others do not.
Indeed.
So when it comes to those like open tryouts at the beginning of each semester, how do you guys go about doing the advertising for that? Is it just like posters and word of mouth, or do you have, I guess since you have the university support for it, does the university help promote that as well?
Yeah, well, I am the university. In this case, sure, like all those things. The students always believe that printing posters and putting them up is an effective thing. That has never been intuitive to me that anyone's ever going to see those ever, but they do. We can send emails directly to the student body at large that exist. But there's almost 7 or 10 years invested in communities and being able to have those pipelines of communication down the student body to be able to do it. And so like if I was a sophomore in college showing up and saying, I want to make a league team, you don't have any tools to do that. But over time, we have a mailing list and everyone knows each other. And at those high levels of, if you're a Grandmaster League of Legends player or an Overwatch player or a Grand Champion Rocket League player, usually all those guys know each other. It's a very small community at those tippy top high competitive levels.
Yep.
Makes sense.
So it
But
is a lot of
usually-
word of mouth.
But what is hard to find is always, and why we do the tryouts, is you have to field a team by the end of September in tournaments. So it's always a really tight window to do tryouts and then establish who that team is and then go. So there's a temptation to always want to do it in summer, but you're always going to find freshmen that you didn't know were there that end up being really good. Plus, it's always, when you're doing tryouts and you're making cuts, it's never just simple as just taking whoever the 7 best players is. If you find a freshman and he's close, then you're making the calculation, you're close. If we invest into you, we may think you have a higher ceiling than somebody else.
Yeah.
So
And there's
all those considerations go into it.
There's got to also be the consideration of teamwork, right? Of these may be
Synergy.
the 7 best players, but are they good at coordinating with one
Work
another?
together.
What if there's a guy who's
The
just slightly...
Carmelo Anthony effect is a real thing. In this
Oh yeah.
I bet.
It is an absolute real thing. Of you find players and you look at their SR and Overwatch or their ranking in league, and technically you're better than everyone else. So why does your team always lose? It's an absolute thing.
Yeah, synergy is an important stuff.
Absolutely.
So then the question, then, if turning it back to BYU a little bit, is we don't have, all we have is our club, right? We don't have the university infrastructure for those kind of advertising. So early on, before it was an actual program at the university, how did you guys go about getting the word of mouth out without having those the big pipelines that you probably have now.
I can't take credit for that at all. And because 7-8 years ago, I was still old. Utah Esports kind of owes everything it is due to a core group of students. I'll even say who they are: of Angie Klingsink and Sam Morris and Jordan Runyon and Carla Crace, of these student leaders that were the best guerrilla marketers and the best kind of community organizers that there ever would be and ever was. And they kind of, as a student club, they grew this idea of Angie was the president of the League of Legends Student Association, LOLSA, and wanted to make a big club and wanted to get sponsorship and wanted to do events and wanted to make the club super organized and vibrant and get resources for it and eventually be a varsity program. And so her philosophy was, we are going to make a club that is more than just for people that like League, or more than, going back then, more for people that just like CSGO, or so on and so forth. So they were gonna make it a holistic gaming club and give a reason for all gamers of all stripes and all interests a reason to come participate. So they would run events which featured a marquee event like a Call of Duty tournament or a Smash Bros thing or whatever it was, and then have 4 or 5 tertiary smaller events around there, and created a community and an identity where people cared that they were a Crimson Gaming club member, and gave them a reason to care, and went and got sponsorship so that you left with swag from the event or a t-shirt and things like that. Was created an identity for it. And so before there was any notion of it, and she and their group were the ones knocking on my door saying, make this a thing. And like, okay, how? But they were the one that they grew a pride in, that being a member of that community was a thing. And so it is my belief and my observation amongst everybody that does it, is it always begins from a organic student movement that becomes so large that it cannot be ignored.
So I guess it comes down to the BYU Esports club to get started, and actually getting like people to start speaking up, instead of just kind of being like, oh, BYU will never let us do it, oh, BYU is so stingy. Maybe just start like actually having
your heels in.
Well, start speaking up, but then also it seems like start
do stuff,
holding events, start getting sponsorships,
start having success,
start doing things. Yeah, like, actions speak louder than words, but like, yeah, holding things, holding events, getting sponsorships, playing Smash Bros.
How long did this process?
I would add one more thing on top of that, and it might be hard for you guys. Doing all those things on campus.
Yes, that makes sense, because if it's not on campus, the administration will never really notice.
It doesn't really care,
because it particularly if it's at a off campus, at a commercial entity that does those things. What do you mean? You got everything you need. Like, that's what that's for. That's who you go do that. That is kind of antithetical to the war cry of we need institutional support around this. That's the war cry of we, in fact, do not need institutional support for this.
Yeah.
And so, like, and doing it off campus is like, well, sure. I mean, you don't need a basketball team. You can go play at the
local
rec
gym
center or whatever it is. Yeah. Oh, and so I actually think involving off-campus things around it takes people further away from the mission. If the mission is for institutions,
100%. So I guess how did this group of like core student leaders that you talked about, how did they manage to get spaces on campus to hold these things?
I mean, every solution in the world of it was procuring a room in the library that was a computer lab that could barely run League with an and which sucks because a toaster can run League. getting a space where there was just lots of outlets to bring your own laptop and your own things to do it, to reaching out to third-party companies. Like I remember them running an event that MSI sponsored and sent 35 laptops to do it. And that's what I mean is before there was anything, and Angie and those core group of students, they knew what they were doing and they got really good at that. Clear to the point, like when you're making a varsity program for the first time, like one of the biggest things that is different from a mainstream sport to this is you have a League of Legends team and you're investing money into it. You're investing in a team that is actually the intellectual property of a company. It's not a football team. Somebody owns League. And so if you're going to invest significant resources into scholarship of a League of Legends team, Riot Games needs to be on board with that. And at that time, 6-7 years ago, so I called game publishers. I called Psyonix and Blizzard and Riot and got on the phone with them and said, this is what we're thinking about doing. So I need to know what your guys' plans are for Collegiate Esports to know, is this a good allocation of resources for us? Are you going to grow the scene in the collegiate ecosystem for this? Like, is this a thing? Because if they say, like, if you're Ubisoft and you want to do Rainbow Six Siege and like college, whatever. I mean,
yeah.
You guys want to play our game? They're like, hell no, we're not going to do that, right? But if you're Riot and you're investing significant resources into making this game not just with a big esports ecosystem, but deliberately curating it for a collegiate ecosystem, then that's a good way to go with that game, because the publisher is a partner with you now into growing those things. And when I was calling around to those things, like I remember calling Psyonix saying, we're gonna do a varsity Rocket League team. We're gonna spend money on it. And they go, where are you from? And I go, the University of Utah. And they go, oh, Crimson Gaming.
Hey,
wow.
And so like that student club without any institutional support had done such ground level kind of work to do it. They were a known commodity, clear up to the publisher level of those things. And so like the path had been made, you just had to walk it.
Okay.
Huh.
Wow,
that's pretty awesome.
So I guess it kind of comes down to like the students actually putting in the work. Because I'm looking at the difference between the work put in by Crimson Gaming and BYU Esports Club.
It's quite stark.
I think we are lacking just a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, when we hold 2 events a semester.
Like I see a movement in the way that in 2015 there was like this thing, like every student in the country and all those student club leaders, when TESPA was a thing. Do you guys even remember TESPA?
I think so. I do, yeah.
I cannot believe we are so far removed from TESPA being a thing that people like barely remember. Like I remember that. But TESPA was like the identifying feature of student communities. Are you a TESPA club member? It was Blizzard, where Blizzard did all these things with all these student communities and gave internships. But all the student leaders from these student clubs, they wanted to work in gaming and esports. They wanted to go work for the LCS or for OWL or those things. And so it was like they were super organized because they were creating portfolio pieces and resume pieces because they wanted to be community managers in esports and go run esports events. And there's a little less of that because I think as we see everywhere, there's a little bit of an esports course correction or the narrative of the bubble popping in esports. And so it's a little bit different because the narrative is a little bit different these days than it was way back when.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah. So speaking of narrative, let's move the story forward a bit. Now Now the University of Utah has an esports program, like varsity teams and stuff like that. What are some things that you've seen that have been benefits to the students, to the university, to just the whole of it? Like, what are some things you've seen that have really like come through that you liked, and what are some things you've seen come through that you didn't like?
Well, like the colleges are jumping on right and left, and high admins, they get sold on the narrative of the top level line of esports that everyone hears of. This is $1 billion industry, and so like we're gonna do it because we're gonna make money.
There you go.
Oh, the classic.
so,
Classic.
Let me cut to the end of that story. There's no one gonna make any money.
Nope.
We are not going to join that billion-dollar industry to generate revenue. That is not a thing.
Nope, it's
Mhm.
not.
We are a money pit.
Yep.
And like all of esports, we have to exist on the crumbs that anyone will give us and on sponsorship and investment of capital from external resources because they like that we exist. Like all sorts of things, like every Olympic sport that is in college athletics, who also don't generate revenue or
Mhm.
money. But money is not a thing. But it is a billion-dollar industry, and therefore it is of a lot of research and educational value to the university. There are tons of educational and research-based collaborations that we have participated in and continue to participate in and increase the value proposition of what we're doing. No school president is ever going to get up at a microphone and like, yeah, man, we're going to do this esports thing because of the money. It's not every university president or chancellor or provost will be involved in something that the argument has been made that it furthers the academic mission of the institution. And esports can do that. It does, and there are things involved with it and research and things that are of interest in this huge burgeoning industry. And like every industry, video games, the film industry, how to train mainstream sports athletes, anything you can think of where it becomes a big economic force in the world, secondary or higher ed will invest in doing research and work with that thing to understand why is it a thing? Why is Twitch a thing? How do you train these athletes? What is the comparison to mainstream sports, esports? Is it really the same thing? And invest in these things. There's plenty of people on campus, sports psych. We've done things with them to understand what are the contrast differences and things. PhD students all over campus that are going to want to invest in things to with their dissertations that have to do with esports athletes on campus. And so those things exist. And our value proposition is every time one of those opportunities comes up, we have to say yes. And we have to do those things and be able to say that we are participating in furthering the academic mission of the university to do those things. But the biggest thing to me, and the reason that I'm involved, is the EAE program has 1,300 students. We are not recruiting students to EAE. The university has the biggest enrollment it's ever had. This is not a recruitment and retention strategy for me. Probably would be better off if somebody would take a few of those students away.
Too many.
It is too many. It's bursting at the seams. Wow. And so there is no motivation whatsoever to think of this as a recruitment or retention strategy. To me, it's a marketing investment into our students. And what I mean by that is students in colleges, and it's harder for an older generation to understand, don't necessarily care that the University of Utah has been to back-to-back Rose Bowls. There is a certain student population of students on our campus that wouldn't know who Kyle Whittingham is at gunpoint, that have no idea if the football team went 12-0 or 0-12 last year. They would have no clue. And to me, there's a value proposition of people think gamers are niche on campus. Are you 20 years old? You're a gamer.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You know how many times I've had to talk to someone on campus and explain to them that this is not a niche interest, that like video games are a part of culture nowadays, and that you just don't see it because you don't want to see it because you're not looking.
Well, I'm gonna get sidetracked, but let me explain why that is. Video games are a $150 billion industry. It is bigger than the film industry.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
We do not put a niche thing of who is a moviegoer. Everybody is. So you don't say, well, 15-year-old boys are propping up the entire film industry. That is not a thing that we say. This is an everybody thing. We know that in North America, a disproportional number of everyone playing League is enrolled in a college campus or in a college class. it's bigger on a college campuses than it is on people of the same age in the general population. It is a college thing. We know that there's a huge relationship with STEM education being a gamer. If you're
Absolutely.
a mathematics major, you're more likely to be a gamer than not. But so what the difference is it's not on ESPN. And so it is not consumed with linear media consumption things. And so it is the way, and when a news story does, like, I remember when we were in the ESPN final for Overwatch, and local news picked us up and said, Utah, the gaming thing, it's getting big. And I'm like, it was getting big 15 years ago. It got
You're just starting to notice.
You just now started to notice.
Right. It got all the way big, and you didn't even notice because you're not on Twitch and you're not on YouTube and doing those things. It's not on mainstream TV, so it's walled off from you. And this huge industry was allowed to get huge and without you being able to see it. And that's on you. That's not on the gamers. That it's not on your traditional things. And if you're a university and those alternative, when I was a student in college back in the dark ages of time, we called new media TV and radio. This is new media. It's the streaming media, and it's what everyone's trying to get in on. Like, linear television is dying because it's a geriatric form of media consumption. And so that's why they don't know that it's as big as it is, and say, gosh, and it's a trigger with me. Gosh, this is getting to be a big deal. Like, getting to be a big deal. Okay.
It has been.
$150 billion industry is getting a big deal. Yeah, it is. It's going the wrong way. It's getting...
I'm so glad.
But, yeah, I mean...
I'm so glad you've said that, because I just wrote a paper on this in one of my classes. That I was talking about how does esports generate revenue compared to other forms of broadcasting with sports. You have football, you have soccer, and it's hard to actually compare the viewing stats because they actually record it differently. Esports, the only information you can really find is on concurrent viewers. How many people are watching all at the same time. They don't really count individual viewers. While traditional sports love to do that. They all just want to talk about how the total number of viewers, even if they come in for just a second, how many total viewers did they get. And so it just shows kind of a difference because with that linear kind of media, it's more how many, because you don't really count the amount of minutes they're watching. It's just who tuned into the channel. And with live streaming and Twitch and all that kind of stuff, it's how many people are watching right now, because that's stuff that is easier to count with stuff like that, like streaming.
Right. And the monetization model of esports is in fact broken. And part of it is we're not taking sampling data from TV and then aggregating how many people watch the Super Bowl, and that's all really big. But you are exactly correct in that we have actual reporting on our viewers, and that hurts us as much as it helps us. But advertising dollars and those things, and I actually think this is to criticize esports. We esports people and event managers and people running esports at the highest levels actually need to go back to the old models of some of these things and the old monetization models of mainstream sports. I think to afford to survive, because we're seeing right now that esports has existed for so long on the narrative of this is exploding and existing on investment capital, and that's drying up. And so there actually has to be a revenue model now, and we're going to see how everyone works on that.
I think it's already starting to hit some industries like the LCS, how they're because they're so focused on the old model of we're growing and we're going to be so big in the future, but now they've had lowering viewership stats for the past 3 years now.
It's starting to get to the point where the future is now.
Yeah.
And
We've hit the future.
We've
What are
hit
we
the
going to
future
do?
already.
You know, you've got to do something now. You can't just be
We
like,
have hit
in
the
future
future.
we're gonna be better. Maybe. You
Well,
know,
yeah,
like you've got to.
And the investment capital was all based on the notion that this is going to become the NFL. That this is going to be, it's going to hit viewership numbers that are congruent with professional sports, but it can't because it's such a fractured audience. It's divided all over the place. It doesn't. League of Legends is not 70 years old and growing its audience generationally through those things, and so it's a different animal in that these games live, they burn hot and they die.
Yeah.
And then the next one comes around, and so some of those same kind of models can't be the same unless there's League of Legends 70 years from now. And you talk about how your grandfather was a grandmaster support and what champions he played, and look at the old meta that he had way back in 2012.
Yeah.
But
That is also something
what we really need to have happen.
Yeah, that is also something I kind of like talked about, because like me, someone who plays League of Legends, like I tried to watch Dota Esports, even though they're the exact same type of game where they're both MOBAs and they both have 3 lanes and whatever. Like, I could not understand it kind of at all, because like even though they're so similar, they're also so incredibly different. And I feel like that's what is kind of the biggest limiting factor for esports to like grow as a full industry, because like it's so much easier to understand that this wide receiver in football reached up super high and just grabbed the football with the barest tips of his fingers. Like, that's cool. You understand that that's cool. But like for esports, like he just did an insec from like a really weird angle. Like, I understand that's cool, but I don't think Aiden does.
99% of people have no idea what that means. Yeah.
Absolutely. My grandmother would have understood that LeBron James can run faster and jump higher and those things. It is a harder thing to convey in video games. But the other side that has attracted every human being ever in the history of sports is a notion of tribalism. There are people that are invested into the LA Lakers that don't necessarily have a complete and full understanding of basketball at all. The Red Sox and Yankees rivalry transcends being conversant in baseball. I go to Utah football games all the time to people that have a barely conversant understanding of football, who will absolutely be upset for 4 days if we lose a game. That notion of tribalism, and that spectacle is hard to convey in esports and it is lost, but the notion of tribalism is really hard to do it. In the fact that is usually in sports based on geography of, you're a Red Sox fan because you're from New England, or you're around LA, or other notions of that sort of tribalism of why you are invested in that group. In the LCS, where there is no notion of tribalism with them, there are people that are Cloud9 fans on things, but not really. They're usually a big fan of players or the content creation things that those people do, or the marketing brand of those things. If you're an Outlaws fan, that is a little different. Overwatch actually tried to tie it into geography, and that was an attempt to kind of generate those sort of tribalistic things. It didn't really work because it hasn't been that way for 25 years.
Yep.
Yeah. The geographic tribalism is like, I feel like the stronger tribalism right now in the community of gamers is more of game tribalism. You know, we're the Overwatch players, we're the League players. We haven't gotten like a geographic thing, like I'm a Utah Overwatch player and you're an Arizona Overwatch player, so we're gonna duke it out.
But you can't really pit those two groups against each other. You can't pit the Overwatch group versus the League group because they're playing two different games.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of causes like we can't really match that level of tribalism.
Yeah.
Which like I think fits so well. Like I personally, I'm not too much into football. Like I know generally how things are supposed to happen, you know, how you get first downs and all that, but like I am a diehard Crimson Tide fan because Just that's how my entire family is.
Hmm.
And so I'll be out there rooting for Alabama whenever they're playing. But like,
Oh, yeah.
it's purely like tribalism.
No, I mean, I will never watch football because I do like okay no like let me rephrase that. I never really watch football because I just don't find it interesting to watch. But when my entire family gets together to watch the big BYU versus Utah game,
You'll watch.
I'll watch because it's exciting, and you can
Go my
kinda feel
favorite
that
sports
energy.
team.
Exactly, go sports
ball.
team. But it's like I don't know. Yeah, it's just we don't have that in the esports community, I guess.
You've got bits and pieces.
It's a very vigorous conversation that, like, for Utah Esports, we want to grow our viewership. And so we've actually generated, we have a production team. We've always had one dedicated to, like, if we're playing a game, we're going to stream it. And have a partner Twitch channel, and so we're going to do it. Over the course of 6 years, we've generated 2,000 hours of content for all of our teams. And you're going to invest hard into the branding of the university in those things. It's a big conversation for us of who is our audience. Is it if it's a league game, is it the league community on campus? That's fine. There's 75, 100 viewers there who are going to be so into the League of Legends community that because Utah plays against USC on a Saturday, that they're going to actually tune in to watch that thing. And so if you aspire to be bigger than that, we never have been, ever. And there's very few esports teams in the country as far as doing their things that are bigger than that. It's just tiny. There is not sufficient viewership in collegiate esports for us to be relevant, and thus we are not relevant. Is if you want to grow that audience, who you're going to get? And to me, and this is a very vigorous conversation where there's going to be lots of community kids in our room who are going to use the B word and call me a boomer when I'm having this conversation, is I think we are way better off trying to appeal to that sect of the population that because it has a U on there and there's university branding on there, and that will tune in and watch it. If it's softball, if it's gymnastics, if it's women's basketball, if it's swimming or what it is, the people that are fanatics about the university brand than it is gaming. I think there's more to, never going to alienate the gaming community. And so that's not what I'm saying. I'm not making it a this instead of this argument. What I'm saying is we need to be visible and consumable to the mainstream sports audience that freak out about everything Utah and about the branding of the university and those things. And we need to go after those people that are the type that will be interested in regardless of what it is, and are Utah fans and not football fans or basketball fans. Because if you're fanatical about League of Legends, that doesn't mean that you're going to have interest in Utah League of Legends at all. You're going to have interest in Utah League of Legends because you're either part of our core community and you know every player and you're tied into them and they're your friends, and so thus you're going to care what happens to them, and there's your 70. Or you're a fan of the U. And so in esports communities and gaming communities, you know what they're really bad at trying to target? That guy. Because they don't understand that part of it at all. And they need to be better at it, and they don't want to be interested in it, and they're even a little averse of not wanting those people because they view it as an invasion of their space of it, and we got to get over that.
Yeah, I definitely see what you mean because like working or studying here in the journalism department, right? We write news articles, we make video news packages and content for the Daily Universe, which is BYU's newspaper, and I've had it explained to me that the main audience of the Daily Universe is BYU alumni. You know, its readership exists on campus, but isn't enormous. It's mostly centered around people who have graduated, who want to keep up with the university, see what's going on here, who are big BYU fans, who just want to know about the why. And that's also part of the reason why I've been trying to work personally to get esports content, to get gaming culture content into there, because I know there are people out there reading it who like video games themselves and who would be curious to see if there's any development about that on campus. And I've gotten so much. I've had to fight a bit to get these subjects published. There's been some struggle.
I mean, it becomes a lot easier if you get Jimmer Fredette to wear a BYU esports jersey. Like that conversation, that conversation changes the second something like that happens.
That's true. And I feel
who's
like
got Jimmer Fredette's phone number?
Yeah, let me call him up right now.
Yeah. Aiden will reach out to Jimmer
Yeah,
Fredette.
I'll call him right now.
But no, that's
a good point.
celebrity
it is a good point.
endorsement.
Oh, celebrity endorsement works on everything.
Yeah,
Like,
it
it's
does work on
insane.
everything.
But like, I feel that, I think you're right that a big part of just creating support for it would be finding the people who just want to see the university succeed, finding people who just want to know that their school did the trick. That's a way easier tribalism than location, and that can work in video games of we want the Y to succeed. I may not personally be that invested in League of Legends myself. I've never really enjoyed the game that much, but you better believe if the BYU esports team is going up against another in League of Legends, I'm gonna hope the BYU esports team wins.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Like, I may not watch a Houston Outlaws Overwatch match, but if there's a BYU esports match going on, I'll tune into that.
Yeah.
And but we just don't have it yet.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of it is we aren't doing enough on our end either. Because I mean, after when I think about everything that was done in the early days of the Utah's esports program before it was an actual esports program, and then I look at what we done or haven't done, it doesn't look very good.
But I mean, I think all it really takes to get something like that going is a group of dedicated students
that's
who
what
are
you
like,
need
hey, we're
first.
gonna do this, and we're gonna put the work in, and we're gonna put the hours in, and we're gonna make it happen.
I feel like we should have this podcast episode as like a required training video for club leadership.
Required training.
But
watch this.
I think there's an aspect of it that we have a pretty wide pool of candidates that we can draw from to be those students, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got, like you were saying, the esports club at BYU is the second largest club, like 800 people. Surely there are people in that 800 people who are willing to put in the work if we just push them.
Show them what work needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so
I would say, taking the examples from what the Crimson Gaming students way back when, of combining that competitive community that wants to do competitive and multiplayer esports to gaming enthusiasts on campus who want to hang out with like-minded people every once in a while and do a D&D campaign somewhere on campus and do those things.
Hey,
And
I'll be the dungeon master.
bringing everybody together who is of those like-minded things, and that's what it is. Like, Crimson Gaming was a hub of no one around me wants to debate Marvel movies. Who am I going to be around that are going to talk about the comic books and the pop culture and the things that I want to talk about all the time, and giving him a hub of, hey, everyone in the room does here. That's great.
I relate to that on a spiritual level. I also need people around me to debate Marvel movies, please.
That's pretty funny, Cor.
But no, I think we've got the population to do that, and I think what we really just need is someone to
Needs to be focused.
kick that off and to hold these events, reserve the rooms, get the equipment, do a big like Smash Bros event or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just get it started.
If I could volunteer a fact, I assure you, there's plenty of nerds at BYU.
Oh,
Right.
100%.
Plenty.
Plenty.
I remember
Right.
I used to be an engineering major, and I had some of my classmates introduce me to Pokemon ROM hacks, and
Yeah.
No, I mean, you look at so like I'm trying to think of like the best way to say this, but when Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was announced,
Mm-hmm.
I was here at BYU when that was announced, and the entire campus was just like when it first came out, everyone and their dog was playing it. Like it was a huge thing because we're all college students. We
Yep.
all like that kind of stuff. You
Yeah.
know, like it's
I remember carrying my Nintendo Switch while I walked to work at BYU Radio playing Smash Ultimate. Oh,
and
yeah.
everyone was doing that. Everyone was doing that because we're all gamers at heart.
It's true.
Like, and there are a lot of us out there. We just have to find some way to bring that all together.
And I think that's a perfect tie-in to one of our last questions we had prepped for this interview. Why do we need esports? AJ, what are some
Why
of your
does
thoughts
the
on that? Yeah.
Why does the university need esports?
Yeah. Why does the community need esports, and why would a university need it?
Because there is the traditional pipeline of how the university attaches its brand to intercollegiate and student gaming activities. And since the beginning of time, universities have competed both internally and externally with other schools in games that are competition where winners are declared. And this is of a certain audience, like what we do at Utah, of to that student community. If we say, you guys are interested in this, and we are not only going to tolerate it at the university, we are going to make it part of the central component of the experience of going to school here. And that entire student community who's engaged with this, because we're not tolerating it, we're proud of it. We are gamer you. It is not only just something. It's not just something that happens here. It is part of our identity. It's who we are. And so those students who barely identify with the brand of the university, because the only way to engage with branding with the branding of the university is to know who Ty Detmer is and Lavelle Edwards are, and to be heavily invested in that thing, and they don't care about that thing. Now the university is making that part of their central identity, and they do relate to that. And thus, they care about the homeland a lot more than they did before. And for me, that's what this is about, and that's why. To that student community who are my guys, my students, and my kids, I am a University of Utah sports fanatic, and I am a university, like, the U of U is pretty much as close to religion as I get. But to those students who don't identify with the brand of the university, I am making a thing that does what they like and is invested in what they care about, with the university's branding all over it, and trying to get them invested into the university and saying, you know, this huge party you guys want to have in this gaming stuff, let's have it at our house. And so show you guys that we're on your side. We are part of your community. And the top level of that whole idea is esports, because that's what we do. That's same reason that the Olympic Games exist and why countries gather together to play against in notions of peace through competition and those things. That's why esports is important. You become a tribe around your people with your things, and with people that aren't interested in games, the gamers are being invited into that tribe. They're being invited to that party, to that thing of the University of Utah experience, same as everybody else, and now they actually have a stake in it. And I think that is really important. And everyone is talking about, like this was in 2016, people would give you the look of, like, you're talking about esports, and like, so it's video games and they're gonna play against each other, like, for real? And the conversation is different now. Now everyone knows that it's so ubiquitous on their campuses, and that it's of interest to every student, that they have to have a position on it. They can't ignore it. It's too big to ignore. And so I think that's what it's about. It's about inviting that entire population of students that is way bigger than anyone actually realizes if they're working really hard trying to pretend it doesn't exist, into the tent and saying, all right, this is who we are now. I guess we just didn't know it yet.
Amen.
Amen. That was good. I don't think
Couldn't agree
anyone
more
could have
with
put it
that.
better.
No, it's about bringing
By the
people
way-
together.
There was a really good League of Legends player that went by the tag Jimmer Fredette for BYU way back when. Do you guys even know that he existed anymore?
We're talking about Young.
I actually never knew his real name.
Hmm.
How about Jared Myers? Is that a name that rolls around? Anyone?
I swear I've heard it at
particularly.
least once.
I've heard it.
Yeah.
The former president of the BYU Student Gamers Association.
That's where I heard
That's
it.
where I've heard it.
Yep. Yep.
You guys have honored elders that you can draw from about how to
Yeah.
they're having all the same conversations that you had. They were awesome.
Yeah. We still have them around.
Definitely.
Discord's for.
That's a Discord. Discord's amazing for
Still in
that.
there.
Yeah. Let me think. I feel like we're at a point where it's pretty close
I think
to
that's
being
it.
able to put everything together and wrap it up.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts anyone wants to ask or to share, or feel like needs to be contributed to this conversation?
I don't think so.
I mean, the only thing I can think is just, I mean, we've been talking about how we need a group of students that can like really get this kick-started. I think we can kind of do that.
The four of us?
I feel
Or
like
Not
that
the
was
four of
gonna
us.
be said.
Not the four of us, but like, I mean, kind of, but like we can. We've got a little bit, however small, of a platform here where we're
do.
on BYU's. We're on the Daily Universes thing. I think we can use that to kind of try to give BYU gamers something to sort of rally around,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
You gotta
And
Torch
that
in
would
the
be
darkness.
What?
A torch in the
A
darkness.
torch in the
torch
darkness. And of course, I mean that's a very lofty goal, but like
Someone's got to do it.
someone's got to do it.
something
Yeah, if not us, then someone else will eventually do it. So let's just do it. You know, like, I don't know.
No,
That's
I-
kind of my thought. I
I
mean,
think- I think you've got a good point, and I think over the summer we've got opportunity to really experiment with more of that. And by the time next semester rolls around in fall, we could really get some things going. I mean, heck, we created this podcast for a reason, right? To bring more esports and gaming to BYU in a more official capacity. So let's keep going on it.
Keep going.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I guess that's a good place to leave
think
off
that
this
is
interview. So, AJ, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. You have been absolutely spectacular. And
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank
having me. Let's collaborate and do things together and
Definitely.
feel a team. We'll be happy to
100%.
meet you in any video game you choose.
There we go.
all right, we'll definitely stay in touch. And yeah, I think that's.
I think
about
that's
it.
all.
Yeah. So thank you once again, AJ.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right, you have a good rest of your day.
Well, we talked about doing news, but I think we're going to skip that for this week because this interview was
I
just
think
so
that was
important.
that spoke for itself.
Yeah, it spoke for itself. So we're going to sign out. This is our finale for Season 2. We'll be doing more stuff over the summer, so stay tuned and keep your eyes and ears out for more content coming from Knights of the D-Pad. But that'll be all for now. We are the Knights of the D-Pad. Knights of the D-Pad is a publication of the Daily Universe. We'd like to give a special thanks to Alan Neves, Miles Romney, and Melissa Gibbs for everything they did and do to help support us and continue to do this podcast. Also, if you'd like to reach out to us with feedback, ideas for topics, or just to say hi, or, roast one of us, we can take it.
Why'd
You
you look
can
at me
shoot-
when you said that?
I don't know. You can shoot us an email at knightsofthedpadpodcast@gmail.com.
Scott, we have seen your email.
We have
Scott,
seen it.
we
we've
have
seen
seen
it.
it.
Scott.
Yes, we'll reply to more of you, Scott. Thank you. #1 fan. With that, let's sign off. My name is Kyle,
I'm Ben.
I'm Aiden.
I'm Court.
and we are the Knights of the D-Pad. See you next time.
T1 choked.